to meet people, to have an open mind on who you could meet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good to know. So in your own career along this journey, what would you say has been the best investment you've ever made?
So I like my house. I laid it out in such a way that, I can get all of that work done. But the truth is choosing where it was. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is not a popular, place in terms of number of, it's a city of 1 million people, not 10 million or more like New York. So it's big enough to have everything that I want to do. It's also small enough to have an incredibly low cost of living. And the key isn't to save money on cost of living. The key is to go, okay, I can reinvest some of that into being in lots of different places. And so I deliberately put myself in a lot of those other pockets because, the best, you already know the answer. The long answer, the short answer is, the best investment I've made is in people and in relationships. I got that by deliberately choosing, okay, I'm going to save money on where I'm at so that I can be at more places over time. So I'm in New York a couple times a year. I'm in DC a couple times a year, San Francisco a couple times a year, and trying to meet people, but also reconnect with weak ties, et cetera, in that area. So, but I say that because it's when you do it that way, it really is a deliberate investment. You could also just pick to live in New York City or San Francisco, and a lot of it will happen organically for you. Yeah. I choose to invest a lot of that time and energy in a couple different places because of where I need to be, including where I live. But where I live affords me the ability to do all those other things.
Yeah, well, that's good. So at the times in your career or your journey where you hit a wall or you've become fearful about the next step, what's your approach to fear and overcoming it?
That's a really interesting question. I'm kind of a meticulous planner. So the big moments for me aren't the fear of like here, I know this is what's coming, or sort of, it's not that I've hit a wall and I can't like manifest what I want. Mm-hmm. It's not knowing. So it's more like hitting a cliff than a wall. Right.
Okay, right.
And usually, this is again where investments in relationships become one of the most valuable things. Usually that's when I turn to a lot of folks, and I'll even use the term sometimes, talk me off a cliff, which I know is a metaphor. Like we use it as a metaphor, but I really mean it, because what I mean by cliff is not like I'm going to jump. Yeah. What I mean is it's almost like that cliff in, did you ever see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Oh yeah.
It's almost like that cliff, right? I'm looking at this thing. There's clearly some rock hidden here that I can't see. Mm-hmm. And I've just got to figure out where that is on the path. And so I'll circle back to those people that I trust to kind of talk me, back off that cliff and help me get kind of that good idea of here's where we go from here.
Mm-hmm. So in those instances, are there like specific people that you reach out to? Are there also books that you like read that reinforce maybe how you think about things?
So I would say it's people first, and then it's books depending on what it is, right? So what I'm trying to do, and it's not person, right? I talk to my wife about these issues more than anything else because that's what spouses are for, among other things. But I'll talk to multiple different people, and usually they'll give me multiple different ideas, and then books and resources come as a way of exploring that path, right? Okay. So for me, the most common thing is it's subject around what to write a book about or an article about or how to craft a speech, or do I need to change my business model somehow because one of those areas that I normally do is failing. Mm-hmm. So the books and the courses and the reading and the research usually comes after that conversation. After those conversations, when I've had some idea of this is the path that I need to explore, I'll explore it in that form. But it usually starts with those conversations and then goes to the content.
Sure. So of the journey that you've had so far, what would you say has been the best advice you've ever received?
So the second time for the podcast that I interviewed Daniel Pink, and again, Dan is a role model of mine, and he's become a friend over time. Yeah. I interviewed him, maybe it was the third time. I honestly can't remember. And I was talking about a bunch of stuff. It was after the interview. We were doing our normal sort of chit chat. How are things with you? What are you working on? Et cetera. And I said something, and I don't even remember what I was frustrated about, but I was frustrated about something. And then I looked at him through the virtual camera, because this was for a Skype video interview. Yeah. And I looked at him and I said, what do you do? What would you do in this situation? And the very first thing he said is he goes, well, you got to remember that I've been doing this for 17 years and you've been doing it for 2. So whatever I would tell you is not going to work for you. The biggest thing you need to do is give yourself a little more time before you allow yourself to get frustrated. And that's one of the lessons I've tried to sort of internalize is I need to give myself a little bit longer runway. I think everybody that is trying to make an impact in the world feels that urgency to hustle, but you also have to realize that it compounds over time. And so you have to give yourself a longer runway so you can have a better takeoff, in essence. So Dan was sort of the first person to bring that into my mind, but a lot of, especially it was around the time my second book came out, a lot of it was that realization of like, this is a slow build. This is going to take time. This is going to be brick by brick. I need to give myself a little bit more time. And in fact, one of the things that I tell people often, I sort of say this idea that if I could describe my career goal, it would be to be the next Dan. And the reason I say next is to remind myself that he is 15 years ahead of me on this road. Yeah. So somebody else is probably going to get next, and that's okay because I'm deliberately giving myself a longer runway. But whoever the next Daniel Pink is, I'm going to be the next her.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it. If the listeners would like to buy your book, see more about your work, and follow you along, what is the best place they can do to do that?
Well, the single best place would be the show notes for this episode because you do an awesome job with that. And that's where we want everyone listening to go to because from there you can get links and all of that other stuff. If you don't already check that out and subscribe to the show and all that kind of stuff, then davidburkus.com, Burkus, is the second best place. But really, go to the show notes for your episode. I mean, it's just a great work. Support him. Get over there. Click over to that site.
Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate that. And, of course, I will put the links to all your things in the show notes.
Yeah, now you're obligated because I'm sending everybody to your page. See what I did there?
Yeah, exactly. I like how you did that double bind. Nice work. Nice work indeed. But again,
it's one former podcaster to a current podcaster. I know. That's what I want. I want you to go to show notes because I've taken the time to collect all of the resources we've talked about. So Go there. It's going to be the single best place to go.
That is very true. And again, I appreciate it. So again, thank you, David, for taking the time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. You too. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. Take care. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Advance Your Art podcast. If you like this episode, please go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so that every single time I release a new episode, it will go directly to you without even thinking about it. If you're interested in hearing older episodes, please go to advanceyourart.com where you can find the catalog of everything I've done so far, as well as contact information and projects I'm working on. Thank you again, and have a great day.